warm welcome to each and every one of you to this European conference on declared work from the heart of Brussels. And I can tell you, we're in a room next to a bit of construction work, a lot of building going on here, but I can assure you all of it is declared work. Once in a while you might hear some of the machines, but it's the beautiful music of construction going on in Europe as we speak. Now, this conference is jointly organized by the unions and the employers in the construction sector. So it's fitting that we should hear from both of them at the beginning of this conference. First of all, we will hear from the man who heads the European Federation of Workers in the wood and in the building sector. He represents a federation of 76 free trade unions in 31 countries. The president is Johan Lindholm. Yes, Johan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, but you have taken away my picture, I think. I got them. You have muted me on the video. Yes, do you hear me?
Absolutely. The technical team is working hard to make sure that we also see you, but I propose you start off with your opening address, President Lindholm.
Now I'm here. Thank you very much. I think this is a great opportunity to speak out a little bit. And of course, dear colleagues and friends, as you heard, I'm the president of the EFBWW, and I would like to inform you that the European Federation of Building and Woodworkers represents around 2 million workers in the building, wood, furniture, forestry, and building materials industries. The EFBWW is the social partner representing its workers at EU level. Undeclared work in the construction industry is an essential problem, which trade unions and employees must tackle jointly together with the authorities. I think that's the main issue. This approach requires creativity, boldness, and robust policy. As trade unions, we are committed to do this. Undeclared labor in the construction industry is constantly changing. We are used to confront employees not paying for overtime nor work during weekends, workers living in conditions far below human standards. More and more, we see complex forms of undeclared work in the construction industry, such as fake self-employed, abused, posted and temporary agency workers, workers that work full-time but are declared part-time, and so on. As EFBWW, we do not state that all temporary agency or posted workers are working undeclared, but in our industry, we see a much higher number of abuses compared to other sectors. The official statistics are crystal clear. We also see complex engineered ways to evade paying taxes and social security in the construction industry. All of these types of undeclared work is far, far away from sustainable for anyone. As undeclared work is becoming more and more complex, and fraudulent employers are constantly seeking legal loopholes and flaws in our labor market. And we need stronger trade unions, stronger legislation, more cooperation, and effective and efficient controls. If we want to tackle undeclared work, we must adapt very quickly to new labor market trends and developments. Digital tools such as European Social Security Number, social identity cards, and the exchange of real-time facts offers us possibilities to use to battle work, life criminality, and to effectively enforce countermeasures against undeclared work. As EFBWW, we are very concerned of the fast increase of platform workers in the construction industry and the high number of workers from Ukraine, Balkan countries, Vietnam, and many other non-EU countries involved in undeclared work in the construction industry. These new forms of undeclared work deserve more attention and a specific focus of the European and national policymakers, the social partners, and the labor inspectors. Over the last decade, enforcement has become more difficult. The number of labor inspectors have been reduced due to austerity measures, but I also have to admit that sometimes the EU has made it more difficult to organize inspections at the workplaces, to organize trade union actions, to recover salaries, and to sanction fraudulent employers. As EFBWW, we believe that in EU should also step up these efforts to tackle undeclared work. We welcome this week of action, but this should not be a goal by itself. It should be the start of a genuine European policy to tackle undeclared work. The ongoing corona pandemic has put great strain on all countries, and the European labor market is still too early to say how serious the consequences actually will be. But we know that they can be significantly eased if EU makes wise decisions. It's now a golden opportunity actually to show political courage and take responsibility. Time to accelerate EU out of the crisis and come out even stronger on the other side. But we need the right conditions and decent rules of the game, of course. And that's why EU, together with the social partners, must increase its efforts and work against labor market crimes. The cheaters must not be the winners of this crisis. Companies that exploit workers and avoid taxes, those companies must be stopped. And our chance is now. So let us take the opportunity to restart and rebuild EU fairer and more sustainable after this pandemic. And it's actually time to throw all types of undeclared work and criminal behavior in the construction, actually where it belongs, on the junkyard, and I hope we can leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johan Lindholm. Strong words there, labor market crimes, but at the same time, an opportunity, and says Johan Lindholm, an opportunity for a start. This should not be the end, this should be the beginning. As part of the opening of this online conference, let's now hear from the representative of the employers from FIEC, from the voice of construction industry in Europe, represented by the Vice President, Joël Scons.
Good morning, everybody. And I think I still have the same problem as my counterpart Johan, because the video is still blocked by the host. So if you can make again your technical magic, then we are on our way. Here we go. Good morning, everybody. My name is Joel Scones. I'm the owner of Stugalux, which is a construction company. Actually, my parents had a wine growing business. So after school for me, it was working at the vineyard. And this gave me the opportunity to go to university and gave me also the opportunity today to represent FIEC. FIEC has 32 national members in 28 European countries. It represents construction companies of all sizes, both in building and civil engineering. And it's the social partner representing employers in the European sectoral social dialogue. The construction industry as a total is about 9.5% of the European Union GDP. We represent 6.1% of the total employment of the European Union. Undeclared work for us is a real serious problem, and it impacts all actors. It undermines a good functioning labor market. It creates unfair competition with the strong pressure on the law-abiding companies. It leads in less resources for the state and sectoral social institutions, and it creates a pressure on collective agreements. Member state and social partners must invest in the prevention and the control, and this money could definitely be better used. It leaves the worker with a lower level of social protection. So all parties, companies, workers, and I just want to make one remark. The last two people that had to leave my company were workers who were working in the evening and on the Saturday. So it's not only companies that exploit workers and avoid taxes, but even at the lower level, sometimes we have the same problem. It's basically the only solution to this is that we all together and all actors, companies, workers, clients, and authorities together fight this problem. Undeclared work in the construction industry is also a persistent problem. It's not going away. Since many years, the construction industry belongs to the top 3 sectors with a very high incidence of undeclared work. It's not going away. We have a problem with the structure of the sector, which we cannot change. It is composed around of 3 million small and medium and larger enterprises. There's a high mobility of both companies and workers across borders. There's a high level of competition, and the legal environment is complex and sometimes unclear. The situation makes it difficult for national administration to undertake efficient controls. Consequently, there will be no one-size-fits-all solution for the whole European Union. Undeclared work is also a sectoral issue for the construction sector. The national sectoral social partners of the construction industry know their sector very well. And I'm always glad when unions and journalists find those companies and those problems where there has been abuse. The national social partners of the construction industry must be better involved in all actions to tackle undeclared work in their sector. With autonomous sectoral collective agreements, and also by a better cooperation with the national partners and the national authorities. 6 months ago, we had a meeting with our national authority, And it was the first meeting since several years. That should not be a norm. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gilles Cons, who said not one solution that fits all across Europe, and stressing that this is something we have fight, all of us, together. Mr. Cons said workers, employers, clients, and authorities, and I'm sure we'll come back to that throughout this conference. Before we go to the European Commission, who we know has been an important engine in what we do at the EU level, let's look together at a beautiful video that helps us understand what this is all about, because a good picture tells us more than 1,000 words.
By undeclared work, we mean any paid activity which is legal in itself, but which is not declared to the public authorities. Not only is undeclared work illegal, it also leads to unfair competition. It has a negative impact on social protection for our workers and means that our clients do not have any guarantees. It gives our sector a bad image. That's why we say no to undeclared work in the construction industry. You too can say no to paying workers under the table. Say no to cheating on working time. No to fake self-employment and social security and tax evasion. So let's play fair and say yes to paying and declaring the right wages. Say yes to respecting and declaring working time. Yes to legitimate self-employment, and yes to fair competition and social protection for workers. Together, we say no to undeclared work in the construction industry.
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who may not be familiar with this Brussels bubble from where we're talking to you, even though we're in the good company of the construction workers just around the corner, let me tell you this: not a lot gets done in Europe in whatever field without the preparatory work, without the proposals that come from the European Commission. We know in the end, it's always decided by the representatives of the member states in an interesting tandem with the European Parliament, but the Commission is really an engine. And we're very privileged to be joined at this conference by a top representative of the European Commission, someone with two hats on as we speak. On the one hand, he's the Director for Labour Mobility at the Commission. On the other hand, he's also the interim director of the new European Labour Authority. We're very happy to have you with us, Mr. Jordi Cure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it is really my pleasure to be here with you. I feel honored to be here. And I think it's very important that in this important area of fighting undeclared work, that we see events like this one, bringing together both sides of industry in order to, by offering different views, but still aiming at working together in order to sort the problem. I'm also happy to see that this cooperation in this particular case, this event, has been supported by European funds through the EASY program. And again, as you know, this conference is also within the framework of the first week of action for declared work, which was kicked off as part of the EU for Fair Work campaign. And this campaign has been organized with the Undeclared Work platform and of course as well with the European Labour Authority. And what I think is important about this campaign, as it is important in the Undeclared Work platform and in the European Labour Authority, is that it's a joint effort. I mean, it's not the Commission doing its own actions out of the blue. It's really bringing together representatives from member states, from different backgrounds, because as you know, inspections and the structure and the competences of national inspectorates are different in each country, and also social partners, be it social partners at cross sectoral level, but very importantly as well, social partners at sectoral level. And this campaign about undeclared work is particularly important in the construction sector, and I will come back to that in a second. I have to say that I believe that, of course, these pandemics and the situation that it has entailed has been challenging for all of us in very different manners. But I think that we should be, well, maybe proud is too big a word, but we should be happy about the fact that we have been able to adapt to that. I mean, particularly when it comes to this first week of action, it was scheduled for the mid-March, for the 16th of March. Of course, we couldn't hold it at the time, but I think that with the strong willingness on all parties involved, we have managed to carry it on now. And it has had a very specific actions. And what I heard before from the first speaker, that the European Union is making more difficult the fight against undeclared work. I guess that this is something that we will be able to discuss. You will not be surprised if I say that I don't really agree with that. And I will offer as a proof the fact that on Monday, there was the first concerted inspection, bringing together labor inspectors from Lithuania, from Belgium, and from Portugal. And it was done in the framework of this EU for Fair Work campaign, and also under the auspices of two European level organs, being on the one hand the Undeclared Work Platform, and on the second hand being, of course, the European Labour Authority. So I do believe that while I agree that the increasing cross-border nature of undeclared work is a challenge because labor inspectors have normally a national remit, but I think that on the contrary, Europe is facilitating this cooperation, which is crucial in order to tackle this phenomenon. And again, I think that I mean, only a year after, and taking into account as well the fact that we had the pandemics, I mean, to be able to organize this first action on the ground only a year after the adoption of the regulation established in ELA, I do think that in general, in absolute terms, it's quite a benchmark. And by European standards, I would say that it's a double benchmark, because sometimes things in Europe take a bit longer. So that's the first thing. The other thing that what I think that Europe can help, and is helping actually, is by increasing the knowledge base about the phenomena, and not just about the prevalence of this phenomena of undeclared work. I mean, we know that in particular the construction sector is a sector where there is a high prevalence of undeclared work. But we also know through notably the last Eurobarometer survey that we published some weeks or months ago about the extent to which Europeans are aware or not of this issue of undeclared work. Also through the studies that are carried out via the platform that ELA will carry out later when it's already in Bratislava, that the Commission itself is carrying out, we will be able to identify fraudulent practices that were referred to by our colleagues from the trade unions. And when we have a better knowledge, it's easier, I would say, to try to tackle those who abuse the system. So again, I think that my second message would be about this increasing the base of knowledge, and in particular, because this is really relevant for this conference, of course, but beyond that, for taking into account the prevalence of undeclared work, the fact that we have been focusing many of our actions in the past year into in the construction sector, and I would like to salute here the important role played by social partners represented in the sector, excuse me, in the platform, which have been very active in making us aware of the fact that that we need to put a focus on construction work. My third point, I guess, would be about the COVID situation. Of course, we keep talking about that. It has shown things that we knew already, and in many areas, as a matter of fact. But if I'm more precise and focusing on undeclared work, it has shown that undeclared work is bad business, and it's bad business for everyone, and that's one of the campaign. And what we have seen here is that at this time, the reaction of public authorities, be it at national level, but also at European level, has been pretty different to the reaction in front of the previous crisis. I mean, there's been a massive investment of funds in order to tackle the social consequences of that. And many of these programs have been through furlough programs, so short-term employment schemes and so on and so forth. This, of course, the situation has been tough for workers in any event, and for employers as well, but in particular for workers. But those workers who were declared and who were neither undeclared nor underdeclared, those who, as it was said before, who work full-time but they are declared only part-time, etc. Those workers who are declared, as I said before, they have been benefiting from these public schemes. Those who were undeclared have not been benefiting from that. So again, this is a new challenge that the COVID has brought even more to the fore. So undeclared work is a bad business for all parties involved. So now my last point, I guess, is about the future. So first of all, as I said, we are very much aware, because of the COVID situation, we are very much aware of, even more, I would say more acutely, of the difficulties that undeclared work causes. And that's why it was decided, or at least it's timely, that the European Parliament and the Council decided to set up the European Labour Authority and to integrate into the European Labour Authority the work of the undeclared work platform. I mean, already there have been instances of synergies, and this campaign of EU for Fair Work has already been a sort of a joint venture between the Labour Authority and the undeclared work platform. The joint inspection I referred to before on Monday also was a joint venture, I would say. And the fact that this will be moved, I think, will be very, very useful. And what we will need here, very clearly, and I think that Ella can be a game changer, is to enhance the cooperation between national labor inspectors. I mean, as I said before, very often these labor inspectors are confronted to the national boundaries, and it's very difficult, or if not impossible, for them to act beyond these boundaries. And I think that by bringing together the efforts and by facilitating this cooperation, things should very clearly improve. And again, I think that in this respect, the contribution and the constant enhancement that we have from social partners in order to work harder in this area is more than welcome. So I think I would stop here because, as our host said in the beginning, this should be an interactive event. So I will be happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jordi Corell. Yes, my name is Alex, and I'll be sort of human interface between all of you, our audience, and our speakers. And first questions are coming in, but before we go to those questions, as you have noticed, there has already been a bit of a dialogue at this conference because Jordi Corell there was answering a point made by Johan earlier, and let me ask you, Johan, you seem to have been given exactly what you were calling for just a few days ago, this coordinated, I think Jordi Corell called it underground action across countries, and is that the kind of thing you would like to see more of?
Of course. This is, of course, very, okay, sorry. This is some technical, I'm not the technical guy, but I'm here now. But I can take some examples actually from Sweden, where my union has taken a company to court after that we found out that the company didn't allow its employees the same salary levels. The Swedes got salaries according to the collective agreement, but all employers, all employees from other EU countries got far from the same levels. And this is far from the only case, but this time it was 200 concrete workers working shifts up to 12 to 18 hours. And we are now fighting here for their compensation, of course. And we are asking the court to settle the case where 2.8 million euro hasn't been paid out to the EU workers. And we have seen endless of examples where health and safety regulation are not respected. Deadly asbestos demolition taking place during night without any safety equipment at all. Workers forced to sleep at their construction sites. And I think this is nothing more but modern slavery. And we all need to stop this type of exploitation. And who wants their children to become construction workers if we can't uphold decent working conditions for all?
Joel Skåns, you hear these examples also from Sweden. A lot of work ahead. Your take on it?
I think I'm absolutely on the same message as Johan. We definitely have, each and every country has its companies where we have problems.
I cannot hear Mr. Skåns.
The people in the sector, mostly the unions and also other employers, know the black sheeps, if I call them like this. And we had a large fight here with our government, but in the last 3 years, we doubled the inspectors on the field. And by the end of the year, we tripled the number of inspectors. So there were definitely not sufficient controls, and the feeling that the people get that the European Union is the problem, the source of it, is because the cross-border work has increased so much, but the tools and the resources to check everything, they were not increased in the same speed as the cross-border work increased. So we have a very, very high level of cross-border action, but we have a very low level of resources to check it. And this balance, that's something what we really need. And I'm even for more sanctions for those ones who not play the same rules, the rules that have been defined by our authorities.
Mm-hmm. Jorge Correll, when you hear both employers and unions, do you see that as an encouragement for what you want to do? They certainly have high expectations for the work that you're setting out to do.
Yeah, well, I think that that we fully agree. I mean, I fully agree with Johan when he says that that we have to fight modern slavery. I mean, I have no doubt whatsoever that that these things have to be stopped. And I do believe, and I think that that's a bit what both Joel and Johan were saying, is that in order for this to happen, we do need to have proper enforcement. I mean, if we talk about health and safety, as Johan was doing, I mean, the bulk, the important bulk of health and safety regulations in the European Union, which is one of the highest standards in the world, if not the higher, comes from the European level. And the European level doesn't mean Brussels. It means national ministers gathering in Brussels. It means MEPs coming from everywhere in Europe deciding on that. And the issue is how to apply that. And then indeed, I fully agree that we need strong labor inspectorates, respecting the structure that each member state gives to these national inspection bodies. I mean, we have different traditions in the north, in the south, in the east, in the west, fine, but they have to be properly staffed and they have to be able to carry all the inspections. On top of that, it is my belief that, as I said before, in some cases, and I could see that on the ground on Monday, that we have cross-border situations. The inspection, the concerted inspection I was referring to that took place on Monday, and it's not a premiere because that has happened before. The only thing is that Ella will give a more structured framework for this cooperation to be more smooth, while the Belgian inspectors were in the construction site in Brussels. There were posted workers posted by a Portuguese company. And at the very same time, the Portuguese inspectors were inspecting the Portuguese sending company. I think that this is a good practice, and this is how we can enhance enforcement and make it more effective. So I think that on that, I think that we see eye to eye.
Okay, we have a couple of questions coming in for you from our audience. Let me read them out to you. Mr. Correll, the problems of non-respect of social regulations involving workers from outside the EU are increasing. What can and will the European Labour Authority do about this? Jordi Correll.
Thanks for that question. The European Labour Authority is not another European level inspection body. I mean, the way in which each member state has decided to organize its own labour inspectors belongs to them. And there are no competencies in the treaty for the European level to interfere with that. So that's a first point. The second point is that, of course, there are international instruments about labor inspectorates, and one of the oldest ILO conventions, International Labour Organization Conventions, deals with labor inspectorates, because we are all aware of the fact that good rules are not enough. I mean, good rules need to be applied properly, and in order for them to be applied properly, they have to be enforced. And in order for them to be enforced in the employment and social area, we need inspectors. What ELA will do, I mean, it will not be a specific body carrying out independent inspection. That's not the point. What ELA will be doing is, as I said before, offering a stable framework for cooperation between national administrations. I think that both, in particular Johan, but I think that also Joel referred to that, is that more and more we see that there is mobility in Europe. And this should be a good thing. Of course, there are instances of abuse, and we have to identify them. And that's why ELA and the Commission can help in broadening the knowledge base about that kind of practices. And then we have to make sure that national inspectorates can work in cooperation. And as I said, one of the tasks of the European Labour Authority will be to enhance and to promote and to facilitate, I would say, that kind of cooperation. And that's what we have been doing. And as I said, only a year after the formal adoption of the regulation. And I insist on that because we say that that ELA was founded a year ago. Okay, the regulation, the paper was adopted 1 year ago. There was nothing. And we have started from scratch. And a year later, and in spite of the pandemic, we have already facilitated the first concerted inspection. So I think that this is what ELA will be doing. And as I said before, maybe you think I'm too optimistic, but I do believe that ELA will be a game changer in this area.
It's not from the questions coming in that there are high expectations from the ELA, but you just said, Mr. Correll, good rules are not enough. When the good rules are not enough, you said, Mr. Correll. You heard Mr. Scon say, we're in this together, unions, employers, authorities, but he added, and the customers and the clients. What place is there for raising the awareness of all of us about the importance of declared work? Mr. Correll.
Thank you very much. I would not like to monopolize the floor, so I would be more than happy if
so let's make sure that we have short questions and short answers. Okay. On awareness. What can be done?
On awareness, I think that information campaigns are fundamental, and we published this Eurobarometer, which shows to what extent our fellow citizens in Europe are aware of this feature of the labor market, and we need to make sure that they are aware of the bad consequences of that. And I think that the EU for Work campaign launched by the Undeclared Work platform, where we have videos by trade unions and workers, but also by employers' organizations and by individual employers who tell the audience what is wrong about undeclared work from both points of view. I think that this is fundamental.
Okay, another question for you. Will the European level come up with a European social security number as an instrument in winning this battle?
We are certainly looking into that. There is a wide project that was announced by Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the Commission, about an EU digital identifier, and of course, in the wake of that, we are looking at the possibilities of having this European social security number.
So the answer is yes.
The answer is we are looking into it.
Yes, great. Let me go back to Johan Lindholm and Joël Scons. Clearly an ambitious Jordi Correll. We know there are always very high expectations from whatever the Commission does. Are they on the right track? Johan.
I really hope so, because the workers deserve that. They're going to build not only their own country, they're going to build whole Europe. So the terms must be good, and the good employers and there our members works in has to work in good conditions, and they're going to rebuild, renovate, and they're going to work against climate goals and so on. So of course the terms are really important here, and not to talk about the health and safety problems that we have. They have also they must also come home safe in the evenings after what they have done all day. So it's a huge responsibility, not only for Jordi, for the whole Commission to see this. And we can make this happen, I think, together, if we really come together. Thank you.
Joël Scons, are you encouraged by what you've heard from Jordi Correll?
Yes, and I definitely loved your question about the customers, because one of the biggest customer is the public, is state, is European Union, is so if we can get one of the very, very large customers to take care also of this problem when they do the work, not only with controls on the work site, but immediately at the beginning when they sign a contract, that would even help, I think, more. So that's a little extra that I would like to see from the European Union to be added, not only the control when we are working, but already beforehand when we are signing.
Okay, time is up for this part of the program, but Jordi Correll, a final message maybe. What should we take home at this stage of the conference as we move forward for more declared work in Europe?
I think both Johan and Joël have said it, that it's not one single action that will change that. I mean, we need, on the one hand, proper laws, which are fit for purpose. We need, of course, proper enforcement, but we need more than that. We need information campaigns. We need telling very clearly, both to workers and to employers what the advantages of declared work are and what the disadvantages are, in order, and to citizens in general, and to customers, as Joel was saying. So we need to really also try to change the behavior of all of us.
Okay, that will be your final word, but we'll ask Johan and Joel in 10 seconds to give one final message to Jordi Corell before he moves on to his next conference. Joel.
It's very, very easy, very straight. Together, get rid of the cross-border problems, and I think we are very, very further in tackling this problem.
Thank you so much, Johan.
Yeah, in the same direction, the same. I think all those companies who's out there now, rebuilt and renovate, as I told you, the ones who doesn't belong there, put them on the junkyard, and that we can do together.
Thank you so much. That'll be it for this part of the program. Thanks to all three of you. And what we're going to do now is we're going to concentrate a bit on what's happening at a national level with social partners working together to achieve these objectives. So we're going to hear from Bulgaria, from Belgium, and we're going to hear from Austria.
Organisierte Schwarzarbeit ist das Gift für das Einkommen der Arbeitnehmer und Arbeitnehmer in der Bauwirtschaft. Schwarzarbeit, die organisiert ist durch dubiose Firmen aus ganz Europa, lösen letztendlich Dumpingpreise aus. Diese Dumpingpreise wirken sich natürlich auch auf die Löhne und auf die Einkommen der Arbeitnehmerinnen und Arbeitnehmer aus. Das ist eine Spirale nach unten und die dürfen wir nicht zulassen. Die Gewerkschaft Bauholz in Österreich war Motor bei vielen nationalen Gesetzen im Kampf gegen Lohn- und Sozialdumping und im Kampf gegen Schwarzarbeit. Gemeinsam mit den Arbeitgebern auf Sozialpartnerebene ist es uns gelungen, im Parlament viele Gesetzesvorlagen einzubringen, die Lohn- und Sozialdumping und Schwarzarbeit bekämpft. Wir merken aber auch, dass diese geschaffenen nationalen Gesetze an der Staatsgrenze enden und dementsprechend es auch schwierig ist, hier europaweit Maßnahmen zu setzen, wo Lohn- und Sozialdumping europaweit bestraft wird. Wir brauchen auf europäischer Ebene klare Regeln, klare Verordnungen, klare Richtlinien, die Lohn- und Sozialdumping und Schwarzarbeit dort bekämpfen, wo es stattfindet und dort Strafen eingehoben werden können, wo die Unternehmen, diese dubiosen Firmen aus ganz Europa auch immer wieder auftauchen, auch tatsächlich dort diese Strafen auch eingehoben werden. Nur wenn wir grenzüberschreitend, europaweit diese dubiosen Firmen bekämpfen können, bestrafen können, sie bei öffentlichen Ausschreibungen ausschließen können, nur dann haben wir ein funktionierendes Instrument in einem funktionierenden Europa im Kampf gegen Lohn- und Sozialdumping.
Ja, bei der Schwarzarbeit gibt es verschiedene Modelle. Also da gibt es den klassischen Pfusch, das ist das Arbeiten ohne Gewerbeberechtigung. Aber dann haben wir in den letzten 20 Jahren auch andere Betrugsmodelle sozusagen kennengelernt. Das sind organisierte Modelle, wo in großem Stil Sozialversicherungsbeiträge und Lohnsteuern hinterzogen werden. Das gibt es dann noch in einer weiteren Spielart, wo auch die Arbeitnehmer um ihren Lohn geprellt werden. Und als letzte, aber leicht andere Variante, wo sich jemand als Unternehmen ausgibt, Anzahlungen kassiert und ohne eine Leistung zu erbringen abtaucht. Also die meisten dieser Maßnahmen sind auf gesetzlicher Ebene passiert. Wir haben dazu auch eine eigene Kampagne, die Bau-Fair-Kampagne, ins Leben gerufen. Und viele dieser Maßnahmen beruhen auf gemeinsamen Ideen der Sozialpartner, die sie dem Gesetzgeber sozusagen vorgeschlagen haben und die dann umgesetzt worden sind. Die zwei wichtigsten Maßnahmen beispielhaft sind der Übergang der Umsatzsteuerschuld, das sogenannte Reverse Charge System gegen den Vorsteuerbetrug und gegen das systematische Hinterziehen von Sozialversicherungsbeiträgen, die sogenannte Auftraggeberhaftung. Ja, die EU hat sich dafür eingesetzt, dass viele Unternehmen Zugang zum gemeinsamen Markt haben. Das ist im Grunde nach auch sehr zu begrüßen. Das Problem ist, dass es nicht immer möglich ist, alle Unterlagen zu kontrollieren, ob sich auch alle an die Spielregeln halten. Das wäre so in etwa, wie wenn ich sagen würde, jeder darf mit seinem heimischen Führerschein durch Europa fahren. Das ist gut so, das ist richtig so, aber die Polizei darf diese Führerscheine nicht kontrollieren. Das ist ungefähr auf das Niveau, das wir jetzt haben, und dieses Probleem gehört noch gelöst.
Op onze nationale conferentie op 20 februari in Brussel hebben wij gepoogd als sector om gemeenschappelijke projecten te vinden om het zwartwerk in de bouwsector aan te pakken. Een van de uitdagingen die voor ons zeer belangrijk zijn, dat is het aanpakken van de schijnzelfstandigheid. Schijnzelfstandigheid die een fundamenteel probleem wordt voor onze bouwsector in België. Aanpakken van schijnzelfstandigheid is één prioriteit, en voor de werkgevers, maar ook voor de werknemers. Daarnaast willen we ook dat atypische vormen van de werkstelling, zoals bijvoorbeeld platformwerkers, dat dit niet wordt gegenereerd door onze nationale overheden.
Een van de grootste uitdagingen voor het zwartwerk in de bouwsector zijn de middelen waarover dat de inspectie beschikt. Zowel mankracht als de databanken waarover dat ze beschikken. En het is heel belangrijk dat er inter-Europese samenwerking komt wat de signaletiek betreft van de ondernemingen, als ook signaletiek van de werknemers en zelfstandigen.
Tijdens de discussie is ook gebleken dat het aantal arbeidsinspecteurs absoluut naar boven moet. Dus zowel werkgeversorganisaties als wij als vakbond vinden dat dit kader moet verhoogd worden. 2, we stellen vast dat bij de controles op de chantiers, op de werven, dat er dus meer dan 35% inbreuken worden vastgesteld. Dit is toch een zeer belangrijk percentage en daarom vinden wij dat systemen van controle, niet alleen het aantal inspecteurs, maar ook data mining, data matching, dat het absoluut moet verbeterd worden.
Een van de belangrijkste afspraken die we gemaakt hebben, is het 40-puntenplan. Het plan voor een eerlijke concurrentie dat we in 2015 hebben afgesloten in België tussen de sociale partners van de bouw en de regering, dat die geëvalueerd wordt. Uiteraard moeten we daar wel rekening mee houden dat er niet extra administratieve lasten bij komen voor de onderneming. Dus het moet op een smart manier gebeuren.
De oplossingen, bijzonder belangrijk. ACV, wie werkt al jaren aan dit? En ik ga er een paar opzommen. We hebben niet zoveel tijd. Dat is 1, inspecties meer laten samenwerken. Ook datamining is heel belangrijk. En dat kunnen we ook vanuit de sector aanbieden. We hebben daar meerdere projecten over hier in België, maar ik heb te weinig tijd om dit toe te leggen. Een tweede zaak is check-in, check-out. Dat we prima en perfect weten wie wanneer op de werven komt. Een derde zaak is ook dat we moeten convenanten kunnen afsluiten met de openbare besturen om te vermijden dat er undeclared werk toegepast wordt. De A1-formulieren die moeten we kunnen herkwalificeren in het werkland. En ook tegelijkertijd de sociale zekerheid laten innen, de bijdragen laten innen in het werkland. Dit is een hele belangrijke uitdaging, ook op Europees vlak. En dan uiteraard inspecties versterken, bestrijden van schijnzelfstandigen, meer inspecties. Maar ook een heel belangrijk idee is voor de grote projecten dat we kunnen samenwerken, de aannemers met de sociale partners, dus ook met de vakbonden en de inspectiediensten, zoals dat we dat ook in Antwerpen doen met de Oosterweelverbinding. En in de samenwerking zien we dat ook heel wat problemen kunnen vermeden worden. Taalproblematiek, we hebben een CAO in België afgesloten. ACV heeft daar ook aan meegewerkt, dat was ook een idee van onze organisatie. Zodanig dat men altijd moet, ofwel Frans, Nederlands, Duits of Engels, landstalen, moet spreken, zodat de communicatie ook met die mensen die van verdere landen komt, ook kan gevrijwaard worden.
Здравейте! Аз съм Йордан Йорданов и съм заместник-председател на Федерация Строителство, Индустрия и Водоснабдяване Подкрепа.
Здравейте! Аз съм Цветелина Иванова, председател на Федерация на независимите строителни синдикати към КНСБ.
Здравейте! Аз съм Димитър Копоров, директор дирекция организационна политика в Камара на строителите в България.
Според данни от Евростат, делът на нерегламентирания труд в България е около 20%. Делът в сектора строителство е дори по-висок.
От недеклариран труд страдат всички – работници, служители, работодатели и държава.
Работодателите страдат от появилата се нелоялна конкуренция.
Работниците и служителите или не получават, или получават частично своите обезщетения за безработица и временна нетрудоспособност, а държавата не събира в пълния размер данъците и осигуровките.
Затова всички социални партньори в България се обединихме и направихме една информационна кампания, с която да се справим с вредите от недеклариран труд. Затова заедно нека кажем не на сивата икономика.
So there you heard it from them. Let's discuss all of this. We have an excellent panel with us, and I'm going to ask each and every one of them to start off this session. When they hear undeclared work, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Colin Williams, Sheffield University Management School. Colin, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear undeclared work?
In one word, mistrust.
Mistrust. Gunda Odgaard, chair of the EFBWW Building Committee. Gunda Odgaard, one word when you hear undeclared work?
Fraud.
Fraud, F-R-A-U-D. C'est Michel Gilly qui préside la commission de l'emploi à la FIEC. Quand vous entendez le terme travail non déclaré, quel est le premier mot qui vous vient à l'esprit?
Ce n'est pas un mot, c'est plutôt une phrase. Je pense à développement de l'économie souterraine et donc paupérisation de tous les systèmes de prévoyance existants.
Pas tout à fait respecter la règle, Michel Gilly. Madame, Mrs. Duris Nicholsonova, member of the European Parliament and chair of the Employment Committee, when you hear undeclared work, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Maybe you can say two words, one word in Slovak, one word in English.
Okay, I will. Thank you. So the word for me would be the loss. In Slovak, it means strata.
Loss. And we will discuss that, what we are losing, all of us, because of undeclared work. Mrs. Isabella Biletta, Senior Research Manager with the European Foundation for the Improvement of Living and Working Conditions. The first thing that comes to mind when you hear undeclared work?
Unfairness.
Unfair. And fighting it at this time isn't made easier by the COVID crisis, is it, Isabella Biletta? What is the background in which we have to tackle this?
I think, as Jorki Kurel has already mentioned it, and all the speakers had mentioned, the COVID has highlighted things that were already there, but to make it very clear that all the economic support that have been devised to combat the economic lockdowns were not able to tackle the problems that the undeclared workers were facing or still are facing. And the issue has been quite an issue of challenging society when, for example, the Italian have taken this decree to bring in the undeclared work in the social protection for 3 months. This was one aspect that was very much discussed because as a sort of recognition of the undeclared work as workers and some help and support from society. And definitively the COVID has proven that when you put workers in situation where they are not able to afford not to work, when it is clearly damaging their own health to work and damaging health of the public health because of the dissemination of the COVID and the virus, then you put society in a very huge danger. And this is a sort of challenge that our societies are facing. Everybody has said that the COVID is clarifying or highlighting a situation that is bad for the workers, but also not only the workers that are undeclared, but all the other workers and the construction.
All of us in work. We just heard Jordan Jordanov, Svetlina Jordanova, and Dimitar Kolarov say, all of them together, no to the shadow economy, but they also mentioned an overall figure of 20% in general and more, an undefined figure in the construction sector. Now, Colin Williams, this is huge, isn't it? But it's also quite very, and as we speak, we see some illustration of what we're saying because we have Sylvia following all of what we're saying. Colin Williams, these figures, they vary across the EU, and that means that there is no one solution, right?
First of all, on the magnitude, what we do know, which is particularly important for this conference, is that the proportion of all undeclared work in the EU, which is in the construction sector, has increased over the past 15 years. So the total proportion in the construction sector is increasing. So if we do not tackle undeclared work in the construction sector, there's no way we will tackle undeclared work in the EU. Secondly, on your second point, that there is no one solution. There is no one solution. There's a multitude of different solutions. Yes, we do need to improve penalties and sanctions for those engaged in undeclared work. We need to improve the risk of detection of undeclared work. But then at the same time, we do need to improve incentives and the benefits of people moving into the declared economy. And that applies not only to suppliers, but also to those who purchase undeclared work. So those who purchase home maintenance and improvement work. And finally, we actually do need to tackle this word I used at the beginning, mistrust. Because one of the major reasons people engage in undeclared work is because they do not believe in what governments are seeking to achieve. So there is what I call vertical mistrust, a lack of trust in what government is seeking to achieve. So they're not willing to work in the declared economy, pay their taxes, pay their social contributions. But at the same time, there's also a lack of trust in each other. So employers lack trust in other employers that they're working on a declared basis. Workers lack trust that other workers are working on a declared basis. So when we say 20% in Bulgaria, we have to be very careful because that actually increases the mistrust. Thank you.
Okay, and to tackle all of this, there is now this beautiful toolkit that is the result of a lot of hard work and input from many different member states, from academics such as yourself, and a lot of concrete measures that you referred to will be found here. This will be communicated to all of you who are watching this conference in the days ahead. In the videos we just saw, in the first one, we heard the Austrian Bundesvorsitzende GmbH Josef Mucic, who said that undeclared work, he said, ist ein Gift. It's a poison. Le travail non déclaré, c'est un poison. Monsieur Gilly, qui préside la commission de l'emploi à la FIEC, vous qui avez aussi un passé de DRH, vous ne trouvez pas que ce terme il est peut-être un peu fort ou pas? Le travail non déclaré du poison. And of course, we know that when we want to speak, we push the microphone, we unmute it.
Okay.
There we are.
Mute it. I think it's right now.
Yes.
Je disais que c'était un poison, et c'était un poison à triple effet. C'est un poison à effet immédiat, parce que ça détruit la concurrence. C'est un poison à effet à court terme, parce que ça empêche le salarié d'avoir une protection sociale à court terme importante et normale, que ce soit en matière d'accident, en matière de maladie. Mais c'est aussi un poison à long terme, parce que ça prive les États et les structures de ressources, notamment en matière de retraite, voire même lorsque l'adhésion dans un syndicat est obligatoire, le syndicat en question de ses émoluments annuels. Donc je trouve que c'est effectivement une bonne raison d'appeler ça un poison. Et que pour un poison, il faut une antidote. Et pour l'instant, on cherche l'antidote. Je ne sais pas si ça répond à votre question. Je ne vous ai plus
I think you have. You were almost on the point of saying there was a need for a vaccine, weren't you? Vous étiez presque sur le point de dire qu'il fallait un vaccin.
Encore. Pour l'instant, je ne parle que d'antidote.
Well, antidote à ce stade. In the video we just saw, we also heard Christoph Wiesinger of the Business Federation in Austria. He talked about the legal framework. Of course, he is a lawyer, but he also started a bit of a demonstration. You saw him holding up this big sign saying "Bau fair." Fair construction. Now, can I ask you, Gunda Odgaard, chair of the EFBWW Building Committee, would you be happy to join Christoph Wiesinger for a demonstration with a sign to fight undeclared work? This is a joint battle, isn't it?
Of course it is. What we call social dumping, the employers and the companies usually referred to as a competition that is not on a level playing field. And I think the conference today is also a sign that we do work together on this, even though we may have our differences. I would like to state that when we got the free movement of workers, and we are not against free movement of workers, but what was the objective? Because when we are looking into the results we see of the free movement of workers, they could not have been the objectives. So therefore, we have to get back on track to look into what are the objectives of free movement of workers. We should also look into how we want the construction industry to look like. And when we want the construction industry to resemble fair competition, practices that is according to law, regulations, collective agreements, etc., etc. In the tendering process, in the bidding, in the whole procurement regime of the EU, we should try to promote what the objectives are and not try to promote the companies that regularly engage themselves in all kinds of fraudulent behavior. Those mechanisms are not in place at a sufficient level today, and the ones that are in place are not used quite enough. In other words, we have to use all means at our disposal to get our industry back on the right track, so to speak. Because I have an example. We are building a metro in Copenhagen. We found a Bulgarian colleague. He was hired by a Cypriotic manpower agency that was a subsidiary of an Irish manpower agency. He was working in Denmark for an Italian contractor. That is really, really bureaucratic. That's really, really troublesome for the employer. Any employer in the right mind would hire our Bulgarian colleague directly. Why are they not doing that? To blur the circumstances and to cheat. So we need a European social security card. We need a unison real-time number that tells who people are, who they work for, where they come from. And we need much more cross-border controls as the one we've seen the past week. Thank you.
Lots of concrete proposals there, and as you could probably hear, some of the construction workers just around the corner were drilling a bit harder, probably in support of what you were saying, Gunda. And let me continue with some of what we just heard in the videos there, because I think it was Christoph Wissinger who also said that now you have these companies like we heard from Gunda now operating across the EU, and he said, oh, very well, but that's a little bit like car drivers being allowed to use their national driver's licenses across the EU, but he said there is no police on the road to check anything. Mrs. Duris Nikosonova, you are the chair of the Employment Committee in the European Parliament. What do you think of that comparison? We're now in a situation where companies operate across the EU, but not enough control. What do you say?
Well, I think that really the pandemic of COVID-19 show us all the weak points when we are talking about cross-border workers, and this is very much related to the topic that we've been discussing today when it comes to the construction sector and when it comes also to the problem of undeclared work. And I can hear all the speakers talking about the social security number, the cross-border controls, the coordination of social security systems within the European Union, and I can say that I only agree with them. We do need to strengthen the social security of cross-border workers, and we need effective tools to tackle the undeclared work.
Okay, and tell us also a bit about your own country, undeclared work in Slovakia. How much of an issue is it?
It is a big issue, I have to say. We, in Slovakia, we haven't been very successful in tackling the undeclared work. I would say we are one of the countries who might need a vaccination for undeclared work, because the overall number tells us that when it comes to undeclared work, it is estimated to be 14.7% in Slovakia, and it's mainly concentrated in construction sector. The 14.7%, it makes us being one of the member states who are not very successful in tackling the undeclared work. It's basically the highest number in the new member states. And the most prevalent form of undeclared work when it comes to Slovakia, it's basically the evasion of social security distributions in a formal employment relationship, and also the false self-employment and absence of a labor law contract. So these are the numbers.
All of this undeclared work, it has really harsh consequences for people, also those who are not employed in this kind of informal sector.
Of course it does. I mean, it really results to the distortion of the average wage in the construction. For instance, in 2018, the average monthly wage in industrial sector in Slovakia was more than 1,000 euros, while at the same time it was only 700 in the construction sector. And I have to say that the estimated loss on personal income tax and also insurance to the construction sector is about 100 up to 150 million euro per year. So it's a huge number.
But aren't we all to blame? Mrs. Gons, of course, said also the customers, but governments are also customers, and governments also often want the work to be done cheaply, right?
Definitely, and as we said in the beginning, there is not one solution that would appeal to all of us. In Slovakia, for instance, 50% of the volume of construction is made up of public contracts, and by contracting only the lowest bid price without any other restrictive criteria, contracting authorities indirectly basically support the gray economy, as construction companies are forced to save also labor costs due to their mutual competition.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for having taken the time in between lots of meetings going on, especially your own very important employment committee, the one that you chair. And I know you have to be off to your meetings out there, but if there is one thing that you want to leave us with as a core message as we continue our conference, what would it be, Mrs. Nikolsonova?
As you know, we established ELA, the European Labour Authority agency, and basically it should be fully operational in 2024, but already on the 21st of September this year, ELA coordinated its very first concerted inspection investigating construction companies. It was in Belgium, in Lithuania, and in Portugal. And I think one of the steps we might take in ample committee is to invite the ELA authorities for exchange of views on these inspections and hearing ELA about what are the most effective tools to tackle the undeclared work. I think within ample, I will definitely find the support of our coordinators. So this could be a very specific tool, and also we could try test on a very small scale as a pilot project some additional tools that could be developed. So these two steps are very specific steps that basically the ample committee can take in a very close future.
Thank you so much. Questions are coming in. I don't know whether you have time to answer maybe one of them. I will read it out to you. Will your committee, will the Employment Committee approve a report on the European Social Security number? I think you've already partially answered that.
This is a very vivid topic within the ample committee. It has quite a big number of supporters within the ample committee. We are in close touch with the Commission on this issue, so I think it is reasonable, and we will continue to cooperate with the Commission on Social Security number.
Okay, and I'm also going to ask Michel Gilly and Gunda Odgaard maybe one final message for Mrs. Nikolsonova. Michel Gilly, du bon travail au Parlement européen. Vous dites quoi?
On ne vous entend plus.
Okay, Mr. Gilly doesn't seem to hear it at this stage. Gunda Odgaard?
Yes, thank you. I hear you, and my message is thank you for participating and keep up the good work and a little bit of history knowledge to bring with you. Throughout ages, in all sectors, migrant workers have been the most vulnerable. It's still so, and we have to do something about it. And
okay.
Thank you.
Very clear message. Michel Gilly, can you hear us now? Not the case. I'm sure you will find a way of passing on the message to Mrs. Nikolsonova. Oui, Monsieur Gilly, vous nous entendez?
Oui, tout à fait. Tout à fait, je vous entends.
Okay, 20 seconds to Mrs. Nikolsonova.
Oui. Il est évident que tout ce qui sera fait et tout ce qui sera pris au niveau des travaux de la Commission sera le bienvenu pour les entreprises et pour les représentants des entreprises, même si les États gardent leur souveraineté, ce qui est tout à fait normal dans le système dans lequel nous sommes. Et il est clair que nous devons agir de façon commune et qu'il n'y a pas une solution, mais que la solution viendra de X, Y solutions, une par pays ou plusieurs par pays.
Thank you so much. That concludes the first part of the panel discussion. You are welcome to stay with us, all of you, all of our speakers now. But first, let's also listen to what's coming in from the different member states. And we're going to see one more video from Spain, Romania, and Italy. Il bel paese.
Una delle sfide più importanti per contrastare il lavoro sommerso in edilizia è rappresentata per supportare le imprese nel contrasto ai fenomeni elusivi che non consentono la regolarità, la trasparenza e la leale concorrenza tra le imprese del settore. L'obiettivo è un lavoro regolare e di qualità.
Un'ulteriore sfida è rappresentata dalla necessità di superare il dumping contrattuale da parte di imprese che, pur eseguendo lavori edili o prevalentemente edili, applicano contratti collettivi diversi che nulla hanno a che vedere con l'attività svolta a costi evidentemente inferiori. In tal modo, oltre alla sleale concorrenza nei confronti delle imprese regolari, si genera dumping salariale e sociale, nonché la lesione delle fondamentali tutele in materia di formazione e sicurezza dei lavoratori. L'obiettivo è garantire una giusta ed equa retribuzione per il lavoro svolto.
La prima soluzione per contrastare il lavoro sommerso in edilizia potrebbe essere rappresentata dalla collaborazione tra le parti sociali di settore, finalizzata a definire una strategia di prevenzione e contrasto al lavoro nero e al lavoro grigio, e soprattutto per prevenire i rischi in materia di sicurezza sul lavoro.
È inoltre fondamentale favorire un maggior coinvolgimento degli enti bilaterali di settore, le cui attività andrebbero implementate e incentivate. È necessaria inoltre una più attiva e mirata collaborazione da parte di tutti gli enti preposti e coinvolti nella verifica della regolarità.
Dacă îți pasă de viitorul tău, dacă te gândești la ce se poate întâmpla cu familia ta, nu accepta niciodată să lucrezi fără forme legale. Este foarte important să știi că există sindicate care îți reprezintă interesele și care îți apără drepturile. Alături-te nouă în această luptă. Noi avem soluții. Soluțiile ți le oferim și avem una dintre cele mai bune soluții. Fii alături de noi pentru că putem împreună să reușim.
Una din soluțiile oferite de partenerii sociali din sectorul de construcții este Casa Socială a Constructorilor, prin care se plătește lucrătorilor membrilor casei o indemnizație pe timp friguros în caz de nevoie, toți acești lucrători fiind angajați cu forme legale. O altă soluție identificată de partenerii sociali este cardul de identitate socială pentru toți lucrătorii din sectorul de construcții.
Bună ziua! Munca la negru constituie un element foarte nociv datorită consecințelor economice și sociale. Înainte de a te angaja, informează-te cu privire la toate drepturile pe care ți se cuvin, asigură-ți familia, angajează-te cu forme legale ca să poți beneficia de asigurări sociale de sănătate și de vechime în muncă.
Combaterea muncii nedeclarate rămâne unul dintre obiectivele principale ale inspecției muncii.
Pentru o mai mare eficiență a acțiunilor de control desfășurate în acest scop, este foarte importantă colaborarea cu partenerii sociali, atât cu sindicatele față de care lucrătorii manifestă o mai mare deschidere în a comunica problemele cu care se confruntă la locul de muncă, cunoscută fiind reticența acestora în fața organelor de control, dar și cu patronatele, angajatorii corecți fiind direct interesați în eliminarea concurenței neloiale pe care o practică angajatorii care utilizează muncă nedeclarată. Prin urmare, Inspecția Muncii își manifestă totala deschidere și încurajează consolidarea colaborării cu partenerii sociali în realizarea acestui deziderat comun de diminuare a fenomenului muncii nedeclarate.
El sector de la construcción en España, según datos del año 2019, emplea a más de 1.200.000 trabajadores y supone una aportación de casi el 6% al PIB en términos de valor añadido bruto. Es un sector que en el año 2020 se ha visto y se sigue viendo muy afectado por la pandemia del coronavirus. Durante los últimos años, en este sector se han introducido una serie de medidas con el objetivo de mejorar las condiciones laborales y de seguridad de los trabajadores, así como de luchar contra el empleo no declarado en este sector. Ya en el año 2006 se aprobó la Ley de Subcontratación en el sector de la construcción, que fue un hito porque introdujo importantes novedades como la limitación de la subcontratación con carácter general a 3 niveles o como la obligatoriedad de que el 30% de los trabajadores de las empresas del sector fueran contratados con carácter indefinido. En este sector, la negociación colectiva ha sido siempre muy importante. Los agentes sociales han sido siempre muy activos. Y fruto de ese diálogo social es la existencia de un convenio colectivo nacional general para el sector de la construcción, que incluye a todos los trabajadores y empresas del sector. También la existencia de una fundación laboral de la construcción, que ha llevado a cabo importantes innovaciones y mejoras en el sector, como por ejemplo la introducción del programa GESIMPREC. Este programa constituye una herramienta online y gratuita para las empresas que les ayuda en materia de prevención de riesgos laborales y que también permite registrar documentación sobre cotizaciones a la seguridad social de las empresas. Por otra parte, la Fundación Laboral expide a los trabajadores la tarjeta profesional de la construcción, a todos los trabajadores que la soliciten. Esta tarjeta incluye información sobre la formación en materia de prevención de riesgos laborales de los trabajadores y actualmente la Fundación está trabajando en desarrollar una herramienta que permita registrar el tiempo de trabajo diario de los trabajadores. Por otra parte, es importante decir que la Inspección de Trabajo y Seguridad Social en España es una inspección generalista. Esto significa que la inspección actúa tanto en materia de relaciones laborales y prevención de riesgos laborales como de seguridad social, de trabajo de ciudadanos extranjeros y empleo, siendo el sector de la construcción un sector primordial para la inspección. En el año 2019, el 19% de las actuaciones de la inspección aproximadamente se llevó a cabo en este sector, siendo fundamental para todos nosotros la colaboración entre la Administración y los agentes sociales para mejorar las condiciones laborales y la lucha contra el trabajo no declarado.
Thank you so much. So we'll continue the panel discussion now. We just heard Andrea Merli there on behalf of the Italian union, CGIL, CGIL and WIL, saying a lot of contract dumping there by companies that don't even belong in the construction sector. Pretty extreme situation there. We heard from Mrs. Larissa Pap, inspector in Romania, that inspectors can't do the job alone. She made that extremely clear. But Isabella Biletta, how do you organize everybody working together to achieve these objectives? What are good examples? I think there are some in the toolkit, aren't there?
Well, definitively, I don't have an answer to that one-size-fits-all answer. But what is the main issue and the main driver for a good response are, as we have seen in most of our research, are the fact that social partners come together, like in the construction sector, that the EU level institutions are favoring this discussion at national and sectoral level. And we have already heard about the importance of public procurement rules like social clauses. And this has been one of the clear impact of the EU institution on some of the sector to try to mitigate or to limit the undeclared work or social fraud. And another aspect is the liability of the subcontracting of the subcontractors. And this has been one of the aspects that have been discussed in the Posting of Workers Directive implementation, linked to the construction sector directly, but we have seen that in some of the countries, I believe some of 11 member states have developed this subcontracting liability for all the sectors, and some have even opened up this possibility to make the contractor liable for the pay of the wages of the workers beyond the subcontracting aspect. So these
and
are...
I think we also just heard from Almudena Núñez Garcia, inspector with the National Anti-Fraud Office in Spain, who talked about this ley de subcontratación that seems to limit the number of subcontractors to 3. Is that an example to follow?
Well, it's a way to go, and especially what was interesting in the Spanish case is the discussion between the administration and the social partners, and so all the stakeholders should be involved there at local and also at local and regional. Some of the Spanish examples at regional level have been developing this real on-the-ground discussion among the actors in the construction sector, and they end up with building these rules that are applying to them in a very specific way there.
Yeah, I think in the Belgian contribution, we also heard Mr. Vossen, I think on behalf of the builders, saying we need to do all of this, but without more administrative burden. This needs to be done smartly. Monsieur Gilly, faire ça de façon intelligente, c'est important pour vous? Mr. Gilly will join us in a second. In the meantime, I'm going to ask Colin Williams, doing it smartly, how does that work?
Big question. Well, I think the first thing to realise is that, I mean, action is at national level on the whole. I know we've been discussing a lot of cross-border cases of undeclared work, but that's only a small proportion of all undeclared work in the construction industry. So doing it smarter means recognising that the vast majority of undeclared work in the construction sector does take place at the national level. And what doing it smarter means in that context is that member states need to learn off each other what works and what doesn't work. So they need to disseminate good practice between each other. And that's precisely what the European platform tackling undeclared work has been doing. And in addition, you need the full involvement of the social partners in that, who are at the coalface and do know what works and what doesn't work. So doing it smarter means talking with each other, mutual learning, so as to build capacity in member states to be able to effectively tackle undeclared work.
Yeah, you said talking to each other, you said, but Gunde Odgaard, talking to each other is sometimes very difficult. What do you think of Patrick van den Berge's idea that he mentioned in the video? Apparently in Belgium there's a collective agreement to require the knowledge of at least one of the national languages in Belgium, Dutch, French and German, or English. Also because of the safety aspect, right? How important is it that people should be able to talk each other as we fight to achieve this dream of declared work for all?
But for all good reasons in the construction sector, it's good that we can actually talk to each other and communicate, because different from most other things that clients buy, when they buy a construction project, they buy a process. The client does not buy a product. The client buys a process. For that process to be as meaningful and smooth and qualitative as possible, communication, cooperation, handling the logistics are essential in order to have a success. And if you do not speak the same language, this becomes really, really difficult to obtain in real life. Health and safety has been mentioned. I don't think I have to explain this anymore. But as our Belgian colleague also said, we don't need tough administrative solutions here. And we are not proposing anything that is an administrative burden. But the point here is that today, everyone who is trying to solve undeclared labor, undeclared work, fraud, social dumping, we are running after the problems. We used a hell of a lot of time, sorry for my language, but we use a lot of time running after problems instead of initially being proactive, setting something straight from the beginning to the contractors and others about how we want this process to be undertaken within laws, regulations, and collective agreements. I will just remind everyone that most companies can actually do that. The minority here, how do we exclude them from the market? How do we make sure that they are not interfering with all the good things that's actually happening? We do not really have that mechanism. And that was why I before was pointing to procurement and use all means at our disposal to make that kind of selections. We want the good guys and girls in the class and the bad ones out, as Johan wrote in the chat, put them on the junkyard. Thank you.
Okay. Michel Gilly, vous venez d'entendre Monsieur Odgaard qui dit très clairement: nous ne sommes pas en faveur d'un lourd fardeau administratif. Nous voulons régler cela en fait de façon intelligente. Ça doit être une position qui doit vous faire plaisir.
Il est évident que ça fait plaisir. Ce qui m'interpelle plus, c'est la façon dont il a dit Il fallait être proactif vis-à-vis des problèmes et non pas les traiter lorsqu'on les avait découverts. Et je pense qu'en matière notamment de sensibilisation du client, on peut être très proactif. C'est-à-dire qu'on peut très bien décider pour sensibiliser le client, notamment par exemple dans tout ce qui est marché au niveau européen qui vivent et qui peuvent être faits grâce à des fonds européens, de dire l'autorité européenne décide avant si elle est d'accord sur les entreprises qui ont été choisies par l'État. L'État membre a bien sûr le droit de choisir ces entreprises, mais il en devient co-responsable vis-à-vis du dumping social. Et on arrêtera comme ça d'avoir des entreprises ou des États qui choisissent toujours le moins 10 ans et non pas le mieux 10 ans. Parce que dans moins 10 ans, il y a forcément du dumping quelque part. C'est soit dans les investissements d'entreprise, soit dans la sécurité, soit dans les salaires. Mais on ne peut pas travailler et payer correctement ses salariés et être 40% moins cher que le marché.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Gilly. Cela vaut peut-être la peine aussi de mentionner que les partenaires sociaux en France ont communiqué des documents qui rejoignent toute une série de points que nous avons déjà abordés ici tous ensemble. Il n'y avait pas de film, mais ces documents seront communiqués à tous les participants à la conférence dans la forme qui convient dans les jours qui viennent et trouveront de toute façon leur reflet aussi dans le toolkit qui sera disponible aussi dans d'autres langues, disponible maintenant en langue anglaise, mais ce sera traduit et vous recevrez cela dans les jours et les semaines qui viennent.
Oui, est-ce que je peux rajouter?
May come back to the situation as far as undeclared work is concerned across Europe. Colin Williams, what we see is that the situation varies. We have already heard that on a number of occasions, but how do you see the relationship? You mentioned the relationship with trust. Is there also a link with prosperity? Is there a link with other factors? And what can we learn from that as we undertake to fight for declared work?
Okay. Actually, multiple questions there. But
yes,
yes, there's a very strong link between the prevalence of undeclared work and the level of trust of the population and of employers in government. It's an incredibly strong correlation. And in fact, it's much stronger than the correlation of undeclared work with wealth. So the higher the GDP per capita in a country, then the lower is the prevalence of undeclared work in construction. But similarly, the higher the level of trust in government, the lower is the level of undeclared work. And in addition, the higher the level of trust of businesses in each other and citizens in each other, the lower is the level of undeclared work. So one may ask yourself, you know, these are structural conditions. So not everything can be done by simply limiting subcontracting chains to 3 links, to improving sanctions, to increasing the risk of detection. Somebody talked before about how we need to prevent undeclared work. Well, to prevent undeclared work, you do actually need intervention in some of these structural conditions. And there's a multiplicity. If you take, for example, the COVID pandemic at the moment, we've witnessed on the whole in all of our member states a decline in GDP per capita. So that signifies very clearly that there will have been an increase in undeclared work in our member states. But what we also know is that active labour market policies and increased expenditure on active labour market policies reduces undeclared work in our member states. And what we know during this pandemic is the furlough schemes, the short-term job retention schemes, they're active labour market policies such as the Shaw financing. And they will have stopped and prevented undeclared work from massively increasing over the past 6 months. And the question we don't know the answer to is, has that intervention in the job by paying money for the job retention, short-term job retention, has that been enough to reduce the level of undeclared work in our societies? We don't yet.
Isabelle Biletta, Professor Williams, who of course is used to speak for an hour as a university professor, has to be interrupted occasionally to allow you to answer his question. What do you make of that question? Is that going to have a lasting influence?
This is a very tricky one. I will not dare to answer to this question. Anyway, what I would like to come back to something, and some has been already discussed on the control. And on because we were speaking about the smart way to tackle undeclared work, and one of the smart way is to be able to discuss between institutions and to be able to discuss on the number and on the way of monitoring. Of course, this monitoring has been highlighted by the posted workers discussion. And I totally agree with Colin on the fact that we should not only speak about the international aspect, we should address the national one, and perhaps the national one first, in a way. The discussion about sharing information and building up an awareness in institutions, monitoring the way people are engaged and hired in the construction sector and in all other sectors, will help building up the fight against undeclared work. And this is, I will go back to the silos function Jan Kremer is used to describe the fact that the social security is looking at one part, the labor inspector at another part, the social partners at a third part, and the public authority out there, and the client is looking at nothing. So in a way, we should put together all the information that are gathered by the institution, and this means that national level national institutions have to build up this common culture, and this go back to the training even of the labor inspection and the training of the inspection of social security, for example, because you need to have the joint and a common view internally in all these institutions to be able to monitor the workers. And this could be done at national, or should be done at national level first, before, well, in parallel at least on the cross-border situation.
Yes, and of course we could hear that Isabelle Biletta also has part of her career as a university professor. Thank you for leaving time for questions that are coming in. Let me read them to you. I can see they're addressed to all of you. So one question is, we speak a lot about cross-border work, but is evening and weekend work not an even bigger problem? Okay, who wants to get started on this? Gunda.
It's also a problem. Whether it's bigger or not, I don't know, but I think various countries have various means to combat, like what we call black work nationally, and the problem here with cross-border is that it is going into the value chain at a stronger and faster pace than the traditional undeclared work that was a bit of moonlighting or whatever. So it has more structural consequences now for our sector and for our society. And basically it's a welfare loss, but it's also a loss in terms of losing the ability to innovate, losing the ability to educate, apprentices, for example. And we have not discussed the structural consequences of undeclared work and social dumping, but they are definitely—
Let's do it. Let's discuss the structural consequences.
They're definitely there because the companies that engage themselves in one or usually more kinds of fraudulent behavior, because they cheat tax, they cheat social security, they violate the collective agreement, etc., etc., etc. They do not engage themselves in education, in lifelong learning, in research, in innovation, in all the things that has to drive us forward. So therefore, they have negative structural consequences, not only on our industry, but on more industries. Where I come from, example, we have 80,000 building workers who have who are educated building workers. They're craftsmen working in other industries. If we cannot educate, it's not only us who have the problem. Other industries will also have the problem because they like to employ our guys and girls. So that's also an aspect we need to bring into this, and one that the EU Commission should be really aware of, because that's probably where the biggest welfare loss is of all. Thank you.
Michel Gilly, un point très important, les conséquences structurelles du travail non déclaré, l'influence sur l'innovation, sur la recherche, toute cette main-d'œuvre très qualifiée qui est aussi intéressante pour d'autres secteurs. Donc là, on ouvre un horizon très large d'effets négatifs du travail non déclaré. Michel Gilly.
Oui, oui, je vous écoute. Je vous écoute. Je n'entends plus.
Donc, sur les conséquences structurelles du travail non déclaré, nous venons d'entendre de la part de Gunde Odgaard que les effets se font sentir même au-delà du secteur de la construction, alors qu'à l'intérieur, il y a déjà une incidence sur le niveau de formation, sur l'innovation. Ce sont des aspects qui tiennent à l'essence même de l'industrie et du secteur, n'est-ce pas?
Tout à fait, et notamment en matière de formation. On vient de parler de la formation tout au long de la vie. C'est quand même un problème important parce qu'on s'aperçoit que souvent l'entreprise est confrontée à une évolution technologique et ne trouve pas, pour régler cette évolution, la main-d'œuvre compétente. Si elle ne forme pas elle-même ses salariés tout au long de leur vie, elle n'y arrivera pas. Or là, on a une déperdition de formation en matière de formation elle-même, mais comme je le disais tout à l'heure, en matière de budget de formation. Parce que lorsque dans certains États, il y a des taxes qui vont directement à la formation et qui profitent donc à la formation de l'ensemble des individus, dans le secteur ou hors secteur, ces taxes-là n'arrivent pas du fait du travail au noir. Donc il y a un double effet. Est-ce que c'est clair? Est-ce que vous m'avez entendu? Je ne sais pas.
Absolument. Merci beaucoup de cette intervention. Isabella Biletta, En fait, nous venons d'entendre deux interventions qui élargissent considérablement la discussion. This really enlarges the scope of our discussion, doesn't it? It has an impact beyond this sector on the whole of our societies in more ways than one.
Yes, of course. And definitively, undeclared work is not the privilege of construction, of the construction sector. And this is one of the aspects that is the most difficult. It is, we have seen that in other sectors we have this problem. What is very interesting at European level is to look at how the action in one sector can have an impact on another sector, and the construction sector, and especially the liability of subcontracting has had an impact in other sector, and this is a good way to go. The other aspect that you underline is the quality for the product that the company and even the good name of the company that are linked with the use of the social fraud, and the fact that it is important for all companies to understand that building on undeclared work is building on very unstable foundations. And it's true that undeclared work and fraud, social fraud, has an impact on the company reputation, and as well as an impact on the workers that are working in this company. All the workers, not only the workers that are engaged directly in undeclared work.
Thank you very much, Isabella Biletta. More questions coming in. What needs to be done to prevent undeclared work of platform workers, the so-called new economy? Workers are recruited via websites, and that's open to abuse and fraud. Colin Williams, what can be done?
First of all, on undeclared work in collaborative platforms, only 11% of undeclared work is sourced through collaborative platforms. That was in the 2019 Eurobarometer survey.
It's still a lot of people.
Yeah, 11% of total undeclared work is a lot. There are a multiplicity of things. Really quickly, platforms, it's in their interest to collaborate with enforcement authorities. All of the research on collaborative platforms shows that people are unwilling to work on them because they're unsure about their legal status. They don't think it's simple to declare their taxes. These are the major reasons people give for not working on collaborative platforms. So if the collaborative platforms did work with enforcement authorities to simplify their compliance, to inform the enforcement authorities about the work people undertake on their platforms, then not only would we as a society benefit by having that work declared, but the collaborative platforms themselves would actually increase the number of service providers working on them. The recent Eurobarometer survey shows that 19% of EU citizens would work on collaborative platforms if these legal issues were resolved and became clearer.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Isabella, on the same point, prevention concerning platform workers?
Yeah, the platform and platform workers is one phenomenon that we see developing directly and developing also through the temporary agency workers that are using the platform too. Here, just to mention the fact that it's even more difficult to look into abuses in this situation where the worker is not hired directly and where the platform is intervening, and linked with one of the aspects that is a real challenge for all of the one that want to combat undeclared work is the fact that you can build up some of these platforms very quickly, and then they can disappear also very quickly. And so following this agent on the labor market is quite difficult, and this technology via the platforms is important to be monitored and to be looked at, because it's used also by companies that are using the platforms as a hiring technique for the workers. So it's quite a huge field that we still have to look at.
If I can ask you, Isabella Biletta, what do you make of Colin Williams' relative optimism that there is enough self-interest on the platform operators to make sure that it all goes well?
I think his optimism was linked with it should be enough for the platform to collaborate. So we should be able to demonstrate to the platform that they should collaborate. This was his optimism, in my view.
Colin Williams, we are very grateful for this relative optimism. And on the ground, what have you been able to observe so far?
In terms of optimism?
In terms of how the platforms really work and how sensitive they are to, shall we say, signals from the workers that they want work under good conditions.
Isabella was correct that it was how they should react. And if we as enforcement authorities can create a narrative of a win-win situation for everyone, if they report the work of their service providers to the tax authorities, to the social security authorities, if we can improve that narrative, that they win as well, then it may be a less antagonistic way forward in a way in which we can progress. But at the moment, to answer your question, they require some more persuasion to monitor standards.
How do you say those platforms? We've heard the platforms need a bit more persuasion. Maybe you can help persuade them a little bit.
I'll try to do my very best. I'm afraid that may not be enough at the moment. The way we look at platform economy, because we don't see it that much in construction, we see it in other industries. But I'll just remind that what we do see is a lot of precarious work. We see temp agencies, we see gang masters, we see manpower companies, we see zero contracts, we see bogus self-employed and the rest. We have also traditionally have had building workers who almost like dockers on the stevedore stood somewhere every morning and employers came by and said, I want you and you and you, and the rest can go home or whatever. So that was the old platform economy, so to speak. Now technology have just been innovative here, but the principles are basically the same. So I think the way we see it is yet another way of precarious work. And I think one of the things we have to think hard into, and in the chat I wrote direct employment a while ago, I think one of the steps we have to take is that we want people to be directly employed and not be employed on 0 hours contracts or work Friday nights or whatever. We want proper jobs and with salaries you can live from. Because that's another problem. We have a lot of salaries in Europe that you cannot live from. You cannot uphold the life of your family. That's another problem. Thank you.
Michel Gilly, sur ces plateformes et l'influence qu'elles peuvent avoir sur le marché du travail, vous les voyez évoluer dans le bon sens? Nous avons entendu ce que le professeur Williams a dit sur ce qu'elles devraient devenir.
Je ne suis pas très optimiste sur l'avenir des plateformes de rentrer dans la réglementation, pas plus optimiste que de voir les GAFA payer des impôts où ils doivent payer des impôts, si je peux me permettre ce raccourci. Je crois qu'on a l'affaire à un phénomène qui est un phénomène mondial. On a cité tout à l'heure, je crois que c'est le professeur ou c'est Wunde qui l'a dit, on assiste à ce qu'on assistait avant, c'est-à-dire le ramassage des ouvriers au coin de la rue, en disant toi tu viens, toi tu viens, toi tu ne viens pas. Là, on a exactement le même problème, sauf qu'on pouvait mettre un inspecteur du travail au coin de la rue pour éviter ce genre de domaine, à condition qu'il tombe au bon moment, et que là, c'était beaucoup plus difficile. Donc, ce n'est pas tellement sur les plateformes qu'il faut agir, c'est sur les utilitaires des plateformes. C'est là aussi leur montrer tout ce qu'ils risquent, entre guillemets, à court terme, à long terme, en utilisant du travail au noir et en se faisant eux-mêmes complices et acteurs d'un travail au noir. Mais la plateforme, j'y crois pas trop.
Mm-hmm. Merci, Michel Gilly. We have some more questions and sadly only a few minutes left. This is a question for Colin Williams. Obviously someone who would love to be a student in the exciting city of Sheffield with you, Colin Williams, because the question is there research on weekend work and evening work, and can you share it with participants? So, and since we only have a few minutes left, we would ask you to give us a digest of what you think you might want to share at this point.
Yes, very, very quickly. There have been a few questions on this. On construction sites, there have been interventions, enforcement authorities have acted, social partners have focused, and on the whole, there is less undeclared work on formal construction sites than there is in the home repair, maintenance and improvement realm. So when we talk about undeclared work in construction, what we're actually talking about, where it's really focused now, is on home repair, maintenance and improvement. And that does involve self-employed people and employees working on an own account basis on a Saturday and Sunday in the home repair, maintenance and improvement realm. So that is the short answer. And there needs to be a focus of attention on that subsector of construction.
Mm-hmm. Isabel Bileta.
I don't think we have a specific numbers there more than what Colin has pointed out. Mm-hmm. So I will stop here.
Okay. We have tackled a lot of aspects of undeclared work, and as we move towards declared work, for those of us now being part of this conference who may have missed out on the initial part of it, what would your concluding message be on the subject of the day? And I will start off with Michel Gilly. Michel Gilly, maintenant que nous nous approchons de la fin de cette discussion, qu'est-ce que vous en tirez et quel est le message que nous tous, nous pouvons en retirer?
Alors, qu'est-ce que j'en retire? J'en retire que, comme on dit vulgairement, la route est longue devant nous, mais si on veut savoir où est-ce qu'on peut arriver, il faut quand même qu'on se mette en marche. Et pour l'instant, on a beaucoup réfléchi, on a beaucoup discuté, on a relativement peu agi. Et je crois qu'il faut que maintenant qu'on passe à l'action et qu'on passe à être beaucoup plus proactif. Il est clair que depuis un an, par exemple en France, les autorités se rencontrent avec les partenaires sociaux, qu'on a mis en place un certain nombre de choses, mais maintenant, il faut que ces choses aboutissent si on veut véritablement que le système évolue dans le bon sens. Il faut dire que la période que nous connaissons actuellement avec une véritable pandémie ne facilitera pas les choses, parce que tout le monde sait que l'économie est plus ou moins à l'arrêt, ou au moins en sommeil. Mais je crois que si on veut trouver un vaccin au travail non déclaré ou au travail au noir, comme on dit, il faut qu'on réfléchisse à plusieurs, à tous, et qu'on essaye de trouver non pas une solution top-down, parce que ça, je n'y crois pas, mais véritablement une solution qui, par son pragmatisme, puisse s'appliquer à une majorité de cas de figure dans les différents pays. Voilà ce que m'amène la discussion, que j'ai trouvée fort intéressante, et je remercie tous les participants, notamment ceux des instances européennes et nos amis partenaires sociaux, parce que c'était vraiment intéressant.
Okay, Gunda Odgaard, we heard from Michel Gilly about a long and winding road.
Yeah, the long and winding road. Some of us are so old we can remember that tune. I'm afraid. I think that in the videos presented and in all the comments, we have similar stories. We have similar problems. Maybe that calls for similar joint, common actions, measures to find the workable solutions. And one place where we can start, and the chat is luckily full of it, it's about using the systems we already have. The system of social security pay, for example, registering working hours, making systems work together nationally and cross-border, and force authorities to work together nationally and cross-border. So we are not sitting in each other's silo, only looking at ourselves, doing a bit like here, joining forces on a video conference. And again, to get a new tool, a European social identity card with real-time information would be a very valuable tool for authorities and the rest of us who are trying and put in the world to combat undeclared work and fraudulent behavior. So that would be my conclusion and end remark. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gunda Odgaard. I'm just going to ask Colin and Isabel to give a thumbs up sign if they agree that on the subject of the day, we have had a discussion that has allowed us to see many aspects of them. We will continue this debate in the weeks and months ahead, but above all, it's about action. If you agree with Gunda and Michel on this, just give a thumbs up. Excellent. So that concludes our panel discussion. Thanks to all of our speakers. And in this European Week of Action for Declared Work, of course, we have this conference, but there are many other actions going on. And to hear more about that, we will now hear from Elodie Fazi. She will tell us what's happening across the EU.
Thank you, Alex. So good morning to everybody, and thanks a lot for your invitation. I think it's a really positive thing that we managed actually to sit all together, maybe from different places, but to also organize this week of action, which is I think it's very clear today that even in challenging times, clearly undeclared work is a topic that requires all the different parties to come together. So today we are coming towards the end of this week of action, and it's the first week of action on declared work in Europe. And what I will try to do as soon as I manage is to, yes, we are there. It's to give you a bit of a snapshot of what has happened with this campaign and where we stand for the moment. And if you allow me, I will also, yes, move this to the side. So we heard a lot about the need to cooperate across borders to tackle undeclared work. It's very clearly an issue with a national and with a cross-border dimension. But before starting, I would really like to just say a few words about what has happened already at EU level. And it's very clear that we're not starting from scratch. As we said this morning, the platform tackling undeclared work was created already 4 years ago. And we have more than 50 members and observers at EU level, including social partners, labor inspectorates, tax and social security authorities. And we're very happy to see that the social partners in the construction sectors from both sides are represented in the platform. We've done lots of different things through the platform. We've done a lot of mutual learning through events, studies, but we've also really, I believe, helped the countries to step up their cooperation across borders. And we'll come back to that later, but that really has helped to build a certain level of trust, which is really important because next year the platform will be transferred to the European Labour Authority as a permanent working group. So clearly it has been a positive start, but a lot of work still to be done. So why are we having this campaign, this EU for Fair Work campaign in the first place? Clearly, we're not doing a campaign for the sake of it, but it's really the result of what we have learned through these first years of cooperation. We talked a lot about the data, so I'm not going to elaborate, but it's clearly an issue where perceptions matter. What matters is how people think undeclared work is acceptable, how they see the risk of being detected, but also how people are aware of their rights. And clearly that means that to really tackle undeclared work effectively, you need more efficient deterrence, like preventions and sanctions, but you also need to take it out of the shadow, to take undeclared work in the public debate by more prevention and more awareness raising. And obviously, because this is an issue with a strong cross-border dimension, this is also something that calls for cross-border approaches. We talked a lot about COVID-19's impact, and I'm not going to elaborate, but it's very clear to us that the messages of the campaign, the need for this campaign has been only reinforced by the current context, which has really highlighted the negative consequences of undeclared work. But we also see some risks of new forms of abuses and of maybe some actually businesses who might be tempted to move to the undeclared economy in a very difficult economic context. So the campaign had 4 main objectives. The first was to raise awareness of companies of the benefits of declared work, of their obligation to declare workers, to raise awareness among the workers themselves about their rights and how they can report undeclared work. But we're also targeting, in a sense, policymakers on the need to act on trying to raise awareness of effective approaches. And then, because it's clearly an issue where joining forces from the different actors, but also at national and EU level is so important, I would say an objective in itself is to have this first joint action at European level. And for this reason, it was also very important to us that the campaign is run jointly by the European Platform Tackling Undeclared Work and the European Labour Authority. The campaign had two main components. One is a social media campaign that started already in March and had to be extended. The initial plan was to finish the campaign in June, but obviously with the current context, it has been extended. And the second very important aspect is the week of action, which is really the one that is led by the members of the platform when there's full flexibility, obviously, on the type of action. And we have one common hashtag for the campaign, 2 slogans, which have been translated in all EU languages, but I would like to insist that this is a bottom-up campaign, and we're also very happy that each of the platform members has also seen the flexibility to develop their own slogans, and it's also the case of the construction sector. So far, we've had, I would say, 3 main thematic areas. In the first months, we really focused on setting the stage, understanding undeclared work, key facts and figures. In the summer, we focus much more on successful approaches. And now, September, October, it's really the months about cooperation and acting together. You will find, and I will later on share the link to the campaign webpage, but there's a lot of different resources which have been published online and that you can use. There's infographics, there's videos, including upcoming videos on constructions. There's a quiz, an interactive game, also a lot of articles that touch upon different aspects of undeclared work, and some podcasts actually, which will be published in the coming weeks. So what you can see in the next slide is how these campaign resources have been used in practice. And obviously, we're also very pleased to see that the visuals we had produced on the construction sectors have been used and have been put to good use. But as you can see, it's been really translated in all the languages and used across Europe. Well, I will send you later on the link to the interactive content, but essentially we found that this one was a good way to reach out in particular to a younger audience. So we had a knowledge quiz about undeclared work in Europe. When it comes to the videos, we try to really emphasize through 2 testimonials the perspective of a worker. And the video you can see here is a transport worker from Bulgaria working in Germany, who received some support from the Migrant Workers Union, and this was very important for him in the context of the COVID crisis. And the last one you can see is a slightly more innovative tool, I would say. It's what we call an interactive game, where you're basically called to put yourself in the skin of a worker or an employer and make some choices. And obviously, we don't claim that this is representative, but it also highlights what could happen if you engage with undeclared work. Well, obviously the very important and the moment and the momentum of the campaign is taking place this week, and we are very pleased to see that all the members of the platform have organized at least one action. Well, we could say there's 3 main types of activities. The first is staff exchange and concerted inspections. They are taking place between different countries, Cyprus and Greece, Belgium, Lithuania, Portugal, Spain, Portugal, Romania and Spain. Some had to be slightly moved in terms of timing. And there was also a concerted inspection in the transport sector as part of a broader cooperation between Nordic countries and Baltic countries. The second part is much more about awareness raising and outreach to workers, to young people. And here we've seen a diversity of target groups, young people and students, foreign or post-study workers, and also specific sectors, including food, agriculture, HoReCa, but also constructions. And finally, well, it's not a surprise to you, many events have also gone virtual. So I will now highlight 3 examples which are not at all representative of what has taken place, but I think they illustrate a bit the diversity of what has happened this week. Well, we talked a lot about it, but at least now you can see it in pictures. The first, well, it's not at all the first concerted inspection that has taken place in Europe, but the very sort of important thing about it is that Belgium, Lithuania, and Portugal came together for a concerted inspection in the construction sector. And for the first time, such concerted inspection was supported by the European Labour Authority. So for them, it was also an opportunity to test the different tools that had been put in place by the ELA. We know that social partners were invited to join the briefing that took place before the inspection. And what you can see also in the picture at the bottom is that it was also an opportunity to provide direct information to workers translated in their language in Belgium. That was the inspection that took place in Belgium. So it combined different dimensions. Clearly the inspections, but also with informing workers on their rights. Well, this is a slightly different one, and I guess many of you have seen it also online. So the European Trade Union Confederation engaged in a photo action, and they've been releasing these pictures. I mean, this is the, well, actually it was taken before COVID, in case you wonder why people are sitting so close to each other, but it's obviously a photo montage. And then what you can see through the whole week on social media is messages translated into different languages and on the different social media channels of ETUC. And finally, this is a campaign that has been launched by Norway, together with the labor inspectorates from Bulgaria, Estonia, Lithuania, and Romania, and it's called Know Your Rights. I really invite you to go and have a look at their website, because there you will find actually some very good videos, but also campaign materials which has been translated in all the languages of the partner countries. And just to give you an example, I put here the example in Romanian. And then you can find information on pay, on working hours, on contracts, contacts, how to work with it, how to contact the labor inspectorate. And I think it's so it's also a very interesting, obviously, example of how to reach out to workers. Well, these are really just a couple of examples. There's much more that has taken place this year, and I've put again some additional examples on the side of, for example, employers organization, and also what you can see at the first one in the middle is actually the joint inspection that took place in the road transport sector in the Nordic countries. So. So this is just a snapshot, and I think the best way to actually see what has happened in practice is to actually go on the campaign webpage and to go on social media. If you put the hashtag of the campaign very clearly, you'll see that a lot is taking place, and I can see that you've been tweeting actually a lot yourself since the very morning. So we are coming to the end of not of the campaign, because the campaign will end on the 16th of October, but we are coming towards the end of this first week of action for declared work. And well, we're very pleased to see that many of you have been actively engaged. But for those who have not done it so far, well, from our side, what we can do is to encourage you to go and to check the campaign webpage to see what's going on, to use and to share the different campaign resources that have been produced, and obviously to engage on the social media using the campaign hashtag, but also sharing and liking the existing posts. Obviously, it is a bottom-up campaign, so for us what's also really important is that you use your own campaign messages, but at the same time to demonstrate that we are joining forces across Europe to promote declared work, to tackle undeclared work. I think it's a very important moment to take undeclared work out of the shadow, to take it in the public debate. And somehow this week is a very good opportunity to do this. I think this conference is also a very positive example of this partnership of really different partners from the different sides coming together. It doesn't mean we agree on everything, but at least we need to have this debate and to take it out there. So I will stop here sharing my screen and send you a few links about the campaign. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Elodie, Fazi, for all that stimulating material. Joining forces, you said, partners in this campaign that is only just starting. We're coming close to the end of our conference with a joint final message from both presidents. We're going to hear from Johan Lindholm and we're going to hear from Joël Scons.
Sorry, but the camera is still blocked. Can you please unblock my camera?
Yeah, mine too, I think.
Here we go. Johan, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. I'm not in the picture, but I'm here. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We heard a lot about this, but we have prepared a joint statement of 10 points. And first of all, to me, it's important that it's clients, companies, workers, and authorities all together have to fight this. Johan?
Yeah. And the second one is, of course, that we need more labor inspectors on our building sites. And our inspectors must be equipped with modern digital technologies and must have solid competence and powers to combat undeclared work.
Thirdly, to me, we must have dissuasive and sufficient sanctions to hinder all these kind of frauds. The fourth point would be for us that we need to appoint a national, one responsible policymaker, which has the power to cooperate with all relevant services, so that we don't have a problem in the interaction between the administrations. Johan?
And the statement number 5 is that we urge that all countries must improve their internal administrative and legal procedures. All public administration must work together and exchange information. And effective and efficient sanctions must be imposed on all fraudulent companies. There should be a zero tolerance to social fraud. Joel? Yeah.
Next point for me, number 7, would be that we have a database connection cross-border, so that we definitely can check it always in the full respect of data privacy. And number 8, to me, is also very important, the European Social Security number. I don't know what takes so long to get this going. Johan?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Joel, I missed the statement number 6. So I go back, but I think that's okay. But of course, EFBWW and FIEC have a high expectation and demands of the European Labour Authority. For this, this ELA must intensify its operational activities and work closely with the national social partners. That's the 6th statement. And then I go for the 9th, and that's the EU and all countries must improve the cross-border digital exchange of information and make sure that the connection between the social security databases. We can only tackle cross-border social dumping if all countries work together. And the 10th is, of course, that EFBWW and FIEC jointly ask for better and more prevention, control and enforcement in all public procurement procedures. There can be no undeclared work or social fraud in the whole chain of public procurement. And I think the opportunity has never been better. It's time for real action. And our 10 recommendations are crystal clear. We all know what needs to be done. So I think it's time for action, time to work together against all types of undeclared work. So time for fair play for all.
Let's get this started.
Yeah, thank you, Joel.
Thank you, Johan.
And that, of course, will conclude this conference, but not the week of action, and certainly not the longer battle for declared work. Thanks on behalf of all of us here for having joined this conference. Goodbye and keep it safe. See you again. Bye.